Hello everyone, this is Huafang Li again. In this short video, we are going to talk about nonprofit program evaluation to be better understand the performance and accountability of nonprofit organizations. So we are going to focus on three different questions. What is program evaluation? And why should we care about program evaluation for nonprofit organizations, and how can we conduct program evaluation? So let's focus on what is program evaluation. But before that, we need to understand what are we evaluating for. So basically, we do program evaluation because we wanted to understand how to more effectively operate nonprofit organizations, right? So the question prior to program evaluation is actually what is a nonprofit effectiveness. Now, for nonprofit effectiveness, basically we focus on two things, right? Performance and accountability, and making them more meaningful for your organization. But so far, to be honest, researchers have no consensus on like what constitutes the performance or accountability of nonprofit organizations, because as we understand, nonprofit organizations have multiple goals, right? If you have multiple goals, which means it's very hard to unify them in one dimension that all the stakeholders can agree upon. So that's why make nonprofit to define nonprofit effectiveness became a very challenging task. Okay, so we need to understand if like stakeholders agree on like what is the nonprofit effectiveness for a specific organization, right? So it's still possible if you invite like a community's voice, board of directors' voice, employees' voice, volunteers' voice, donors' voice, as well as the managerial and the leadership's voice. And you can all sit on the table, deliberate it, and finally to be able to figure out what the specific indicators or criteria for effectiveness for that specific nonprofit organization, right? But we also want to like, okay, many people say, okay, is there any best practice for understanding and measure nonprofit effectiveness? I would say, unfortunately, we can only come up with some general rules, but it should be very careful if you want to apply so-called best practice to your organization without considering the specifications of your nonprofit organization, right? Including the uniqueness of the service area or the niche market, and including not only just the niche market environment, but also your unique composition of your leadership team, as well as many of the stakeholders involved. And also you need to understand the relationship with the community you located. So there's many other things will affect the effectiveness of so-called the best practices, right? So to more inclusive approach, we need to involve all the voices and sit on the table, deliberate it, and to understand what is the effectiveness of a specific nonprofit organization, and be cautious about the best practices. All right, so there's a couple series to explain nonprofit effectiveness. The first one is called the goal attainment model. That's more rational, right? So you need to understand whether or not your practice actually can help you achieve the goal of nonprofit organization. And the second approach is system resource approach, right? So it is defined as the ability to acquire resources. You can define resource in a more broader way, including financial resources, connections, social capital, as well as human capital, etc. Right? And the third approach is the internal process approach. This is basically more managerial. Say, okay, how you can streamline the communication and making resources more to be used more effectively within the organization, right? So that's why there's something called best practices, because many people believe we can borrow some ideas from business. But as we already said, that needs to be very careful. If you adopt best practices without considering the uniqueness of your organization, that may not result in a way that as you expected. All right, the final approach is more inclusive, multiple constituents or stakeholders approach, right? So, and also you may want to consider the larger environment because the organization is embedded in the society. So you also want to adopt the social constructionist approach. But basically we want to say is, okay, this is more inclusive. However, does it have something is not in the line with the traditional definition of effectiveness, because if you want to involve more shareholders or stakeholders, which means the coordination cost or transaction cost will be much higher and it's more time consuming, right? But that's for a good reason. So there will be some sort of trade-offs between different approaches. They are not always can be in the same page, right? Some will conflict with the others. So it all depends on maybe you know in the short run what you should do, and in the long run what you should do. But these are the different series of nonprofit effectiveness. So there's some key insights I want to highlight here. Is first, this is a matter of comparison, right? So as we talk about whether or not your organization is performing better than your peers, similar organizations, or perform better than previous years. So this is all a matter of comparison. So you need to establish some records of your peer institutes, peer organizations, and the previous records of your organization. So if you are outperforming both of these, maybe you are on the right track. And also we need to understand, as previously discussed, because nonprofit has multiple goals, so the effectiveness is actually multiple dimensional. So for organization practices, right, as we said, okay, more inclusive, engaging stakeholders, and that means you need to get the board of directors involved. And we also need to talk about the capacity building if you are aiming at long-term goals, and also, of course, focusing on program evaluation, right? So anyway, if we approach this and also understand the nonprofit organizations is not independent like organization, right? It's embedded in the social society. So we need to understand that the effectiveness is actually a process of social construction, right? So these will help you to understand on a broader overview of nonprofit effectiveness. Now, this is important because without understanding the effectiveness, it's very hard for us to understand how to conduct program evaluation. Now, what is program evaluation anyway? So program evaluation is a systematic approach, right, to regularly measure the effectiveness of specific programs and to continuously improve based on the evaluation or measurements. Okay, so this is actually a process instead of like one shot thing. So you need to plan the process for outcome assessment, because that will help you to build upon the assessment and continuously improve. So to do that, as we said, first we need to define the goals of the programs and measure those programs. You need to come up with some criteria. Now, common criteria will include like cost-benefit analysis. Anyway, we need to understand the economic side of the program. But the program is multi-goal, multi-dimensioned, and we also need to understand whether or not this is feasible, right? is this actually doable to do outcome assessment or program evaluation, and is this sustainable? Is the program itself sustainable in the long run? Then there are two approaches in general to program evaluation. One is called objective evaluation approach. So you set like those objective criteria, then according to these to conduct the evaluation. However, another approach is more inclusive, somehow more practical in a way than the objective approach. Some people would argue, objective approach, is that not practical because you already set all the criteria, it's clear, then you check marks or quantify some of the variables, so it will help you to determine whether or not the program is working. But consider all the previous complicated backgrounds and dimensions that we discussed. Utilization-focused evaluation approach is actually more practical because we are actually going to utilize these in the real world. Okay. So, what is the utilization-focused approach? Now, first, go off balance rather than objectivity. Now, this distinguishes this approach significantly from the objective approach, right? Because this is a balance of multiple goals, right? Instead of focusing on a single one, you need to balance it. That's why also it's related to like flexibility, sustainability in the long run, etc., right? And also it focuses on balanced assessment, right? Because this is a multiple dimension, multiple goals, and also rejects outcome assessment as the only purpose for an evaluation because you are going to use this for something else. Now, focusing on the improvement instead of just evaluation. So what's evaluation for anyway, right? And also seeks information for use in modifying and improving programs because, as we said, this is a continuous process instead of a one-shot thing. All right, so how can we actually do program evaluation? Now we need to focus on one single word that's called causality, right? Because we need to understand the causal relationship between a program and the outcome, right? So if the program is working, then it will causally reflect it in the outcome improvements. So then the several ways, I will just briefly mention them, and if we are going to dig into deeper, maybe there should be a course called program evaluation. You should take a program evaluation course to fully understand all these approaches. So first will be the experiment. So the basic form will be A/B test. Right, you have a control group, you have a treatment group. The control group don't have the program, and the treatment group have the program. Then you compare the outcomes after a while. Then if you find the significant improvement in the control group, then we will say the program is working. Okay, so it's easy to say, right? You can experiment with a control and treatment groups. However, in reality, there may be many different constraints won't allow you to conduct experiments. So maybe based on observational data, you can run quasi-experiments, right? So if there's no way for you to conduct experiments, maybe you can find similar groups for your comparison. So there's quasi-experimental methods like difference in difference, which means you find statistically insignificant groups for your control, and you have the treatment group, you already have the program, right? So then you, after a while, right, because only one group has the program, so you will have difference between the groups and also the difference before and after the programs. So that's why it's called difference in difference. So there's many variations, and the regression discontinuity, RD, maybe, for the program to evaluate the effectiveness of a program, you can somehow create a random cut will create two groups. One's control somehow very close to the treatment group, but the fact is that they actually don't have the program as a treatment. So then after a while, you compare the results or the outcomes of two groups, right? Because it's a random cut, two groups similar to each other, and if you find a significant improvement with a group of the programs, then maybe you can say, okay, this program is working, right? It's actually the same idea. And of course, more traditionally, you can find regress with the program and control the other covariants to figure out whether or not then the causal effects. And you can also use instrumental variable methods, metric methods, deal with panel data, etc., just to understand better whether the causality is established. Okay, so these are more like traditional statistical methods. I won't talk the details in this video. But I want to also emphasize one thing often been overlooked in program evaluation is simply ask why. Ask people why, right? So this is more like a qualitative evidence. If you find one program, after program been like implemented for a while and the customer clients are satisfied and people working inside the nonprofit organization feels good about it, and shareholders also say, oh, this is great, right? So then we want to ask why, right? So simple. Then people will give you different reasons, and then you also cross-examine from different stakeholders approach, try to validate whether or not the causality been established. Okay, so that will be very straightforward, easy to implement, but a very useful program evaluation method. Okay, so I think that's enough for this short video, and we'll see you next